Welcome into the KINGSBEAT podcast. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We are a Blue Wire podcast, and joining me today, Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing all right. How are you guys doing? Just here on it, enjoying a weekend with you fellas.
There we are. It is a nice
Yeah.
little sunny weekend, isn't it? Sunny weekend.
Beautiful.
We also have Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you?
I am doing well. Nothing too crazy. I went to a concert on Thursday. That was a good time. My first time over there at Ace of Spades, actually.
What'd you see?
I saw a little more low key. It was Skizzy Mars and Marky Basie, if you're familiar.
Oh, Marky Basie. Yeah, I know more. I don't know the other guy. But
I was mainly there for Skizzy, I will say. Marky Basie was cool. But yeah, first time at the venue was cool. It reminded me of like my more home venue of that is the Catalyst in Santa Cruz, and felt sort of like a similar atmosphere and size, shorter stage. You're right there. So it was a good time. Can't complain.
Ace of Spades is phenomenal.
Yeah, I haven't been there in a while, but it's always been a good time. Yeah, I've seen quite a few bands there. Like on occasion, they get some pretty good acts. Welcome in if you're listening here live on YouTube. We decided to go live out of nowhere, and it just happens to be that way. We have to sort of shoot from the hip on these things recently, just because of all of our different jobs. But thanks for joining us. I'm going to tweet out right now to join us. And we'll get this party started. Again, let's just do the business stuff. If you are watching here on YouTube and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. You subscribe to the channel, do all that good stuff. If you're listening in podcast form, give us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast. That would be greatly appreciated. And we, of course, have a newsletter. Go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat, and join us for all of our festivities. So, guys, how is everything going? We're past the dog days of summer. We're in like the waning moments before our lives change dramatically for a 6-month period. Do you guys have any last minute things you're doing before this thing goes off its rails?
I hope so. But for me, I think like the groove has already started. At Fox 40, you got the high school football coverage. 49ers have started. Got Davis and Sac State kind of underway, as we're live on YouTube, but recording the podcast. Like Sac State has their home opener for football, and some pretty exciting times over there as they're looking at possibly seeing if they have the amenities and the resources and just the overall, desire to move up into maybe a Pac-12, maybe a Mountain West. That could be some pretty exciting times for them. I have some reservations about it myself in terms of what they can maybe truly get done, but yeah, there's some pretty exciting things going on. But yeah, I'm already kind of back into a little bit of the flow. Hopefully basketball will start to, occupy some more of that attention here in the next few weeks coming up. So looking forward to it.
Still pretty chill on my end, and definitely locked into some football. Happy to be beating coworkers at some fantasy football and rubbing it in their faces a little bit. But for the most part, pretty good. I think I'm going to go see Bryce Eldridge at the River Cats here coming up. Giants #1 prospect that they're calling up, and might make my way to the final A's game to cover as well. So a couple little things here and there, but for the most part, kind of making sure I'm prepped on this team as season's right around the corner, or at least media day and everything that comes after that.
Eldridge has moved up fast, bro.
Yes,
just really fast. So yeah,
he's climbing. The A's have a couple of climbers too. Their #1 draft pick, just like he was in AA after like 8 games. They drafted him, signed him, and then he hits like 4 homers in the first week of the season. They're like, what in the world? And just bring him right up. We do have people showing up. This is amazing. That's why I love doing this live at the last second. Welcome in Chris Ochoa, Miss Mac, Jim Garfinkel, Spencer. Hello, Spencer. There's Brenden Nunes saying hi to Spencer in the chat. All of this is good stuff. Welcome in everybody who is just catching up to us being on a live show right now. I'm heading to Vegas later this week. We don't have any shows planned though. I don't know what we're doing. I got to be honest. I have no idea. I'm just along for the ride. It's a couple of friends have 50th birthdays or 50 plus birthdays. So we're going to go and hang out and like be part of their festivities for like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, something like come back
Well,
on
the good
Saturday.
news is you're going to be in Vegas, so there's shows all over the place. You can just pick one. You just do it very spontaneously if you want. Are you there for a weekend or is it during the week?
No, it's during the week. So we're going to be there
A little
Wednesday
harder.
night, Thursday night, Friday night, and then coming back Saturday morning. So yeah, just a little getaway before the season starts. Kind of feel like we needed one of those getaways, like because I think this is going to be a really interesting season, but I think it's going to be a busy season for us. I think we're going to have a lot to cover, especially some of the faces that we have, the new faces that are here in Sacramento, and some of the personalities we have, and not only that, all the things that are going on with these personalities right now. So if we're going to start King Talk, let's start with that. DeMar DeRozan just had his book come out this week. I think it came out on Thursday. I had it shipped. It's called Above the Noise, right here. I'm in the first chapter still, but I'm moving along. It seems to be a very quick read and a very like honest.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Moving along when you're in the first chapter, like you're 4 pages. I think that first chapter is like 9 pages.
No. I'm like 11 pages in, something like that.
Oh, okay.
So no. Once I get into a book, when I hit the midway point of a book, I'll finish it in like. It's like so fast, it's crazy. I don't know what it is. Like my mind, as soon as I know I'm halfway through a book, it's over. And it doesn't matter how long the book is. I just like my brain locks in. I'm like, okay, we're just going to read until it's done. So I hope to be done to talk about it fully Monday on the Insiders. And if not, it'll be Tuesday. It won't be very long. It's I don't know, roughly 200 and something pages. The forward is by the great Greg Popovich. So Sean, you're a little bit deeper in the book. You have any first takeaways?
Yeah, I have a lot. I mean, I may have put this out on social media earlier this week. On the day it came out, I was fortunate to get mine. I think almost a full week ahead of the release date, and I'm basically done. I've had a couple delays in trying to close the chapter, no pun intended, but yeah, I mean it's very eye-opening in terms of what DeMar DeRozan went through as a child growing up in Compton, and I think even someone who may have grown up in a rough area certainly could probably relate to some of the trials and tribulations that come along with that, but I wouldn't say it's a typical, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened type of story. I think there's a lot of good that has also come out of it. But you look at what he's gone through, and also kind of how and I can't wait to talk to him about this, I think in the next week or so, but he was shown a little grace, by the neighborhood at various points because of his basketball talent. And I can't help but wonder how much he carries that with him, because there is a lot of bad stuff that happened in his upbringing, but a lot of good as well. And it's amazing to know that you've got literally a basketball superstar for the greater part of his NBA career. And certainly, we're here from California. I saw him play in high school. Shows how old I am. I remember his pre-draft workout with the Kings, and he took a lot of grief for, not having a group workout, just like, Marco Rubio did the same year. He was doing all his stuff individual.
Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio's not tall enough to play
Sorry,
basketball.
Marco Rubio. Yeah, Ricky Rubio.
Not
Marco Rubio. Excuse me. Yeah, been watching a lot of these debates in politics lately, and not little Marco, Ricky Rubio for sure.
There you go.
But yes, yeah, I mean, remember when Ricky Rubio, when the Kings were really having a lot of group workouts, he wasn't going to be a part of group workouts, wanted to do individual. DeMar did the same thing, and it's interesting to see him and Brandon Jennings kind of go one right after the other, coming from kind of the same area. And anyway, just long-winded way of saying you think a lot about him already. I mean, it's not that, you think of like he's not in the LeBron or Michael Jordan stratosphere or Kobe Bryant stratosphere, but there's a lot of things that you learn along the way. Because I remember when I was sitting down, I was like, what am I really going to learn here? I know a lot of the things already about what DeMar DeRozan has been meant to the NBA, the mental health aspect of things, him being on the forefront of a lot of things, and just his path. And there's a lot in there you don't know, and it's fascinating. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'm excited to like get deep into this, and like just the early pages that I'm reading, it feels raw and authentic, which is cool. Like it does not feel like it's just been really, really ripped into by an editor who's just, taking down what he's saying but turning it into his own language and everything else. It feels super authentic so far. So I'm excited to get to sort of run through it this weekend and have it, and be a little bit more prepared to talk about it. But then also to like have a guy in the locker room that these things about, and that you have like more in-depth understanding of who they are. Because a lot of times when we, whether it's, us like interviewing a player, or, Sean, you go and you do these things where, you sort of sit down with someone, you get sort of deeper into their lives. Um, it's just a snippet of what's happening then, or a snippet of what happened to them at one point that may have been brought up for some reason or another. It's not really a bigger picture, and so I'm excited to kind of see a bigger picture of who he is, and then I just think it'll give a new element of like understanding about a player that, number one, is a star, but also that we get to catch at the tail end of his career, where I think he's probably more refined to speak on things, where he's more comfortable in who he is as a person and as a player. And it's kind of cool because we always see the life cycle of players, and to have young players that might do something like this, you're not going to be able to get nearly as much out of most young players when it comes to like having conversations and stuff. So I think it's cool that we're getting like a star who now we have like a much deeper understanding about, and that's just intriguing to me.
I think Brendan's the. Sorry, Brendan. I actually think you're the perfect person to ask, because you are still relatively new into your NBA career, and like what fascinates you about DeMar DeRozan, and like I feel like you probably know a lot about him already, but what fascinates you from a basketball aspect?
I mean, from a basketball aspect, I think mixing in the styles of play that's going on here, of he's a little bit more slow it down, get to your spots, and pick your moments, and compared to the fast style of play that the Kings obviously play. And I think that there needs to be a healthy balance. It's not just fully, when we talked to Mike Brown in Vegas, he said that the pace is something that DeMar is going to have to adjust to, but it goes both ways, right? It's also how do they complement and idealize the skill set that DeMar has. So I think that's the thing that really stands out to me. I think defensively also as well, but he guards bigger players. I think can kind of sort of fill that Harrison Barnes, play physical against a LeBron, a Kawhi, and things like that. Obviously not a lockdown defender, and far from it, but interested to see how that functions a little bit, and just how the wealth is shared, really, because the development of Keegan Murray, and at this point, the roster that you have, there's so much importance when we're talking what the eventual ceiling is in internal growth. And really, I look at Keegan Murray in that aspect, and De'Aaron Fox is the other one I look at there as well. So how are these guys going to be able to continue to expand their game? And is that going to take a coaching staff working them into getting moments, or is that mean they need to call their own number sometimes? And DeMar seems like a guy everywhere that he's been that's willing to play that second fiddle when appropriate. We've seen Kobe White have really big moments throughout the course of last year, and DeMar be supportive and even encouraging of all that. So some of the things I'm kind of interested about there, but the one thing I'll say about I really appreciate his transparency as a person. I haven't gotten the book yet, but he's doing a whole media tour along with it as well. A book tour. He's on Club 520 with Jeff Teague, Podcast P with Paul George. He's going on First Take. He's going on The Breakfast Club even. And so I've caught a lot of that. And I appreciate how humanizing it really is, because I think that that's been one of my realizations. Like, I think I'm going into about my fourth season technically doing this. And, it's cliche, but one of the biggest realizations is just how normal all of these dudes are. And I think that it's helpful from an outside perspective to like DeMar does a really good job of expressing that they're going through similar things, even if obviously there's circumstances, there's the financial aspect and benefits of playing in this league. But I think he does a really good job of just being genuine and humanizing NBA players that so many people idolize.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Anytime you get to see a window into somebody, into somebody's life that's different, that makes them more authentic, I'm always intrigued by it. Like, again, the X's and O's are one thing. Watching players, win and lose games, covering games on a nightly basis is one thing. But I always like, the ability to kind of dive into a story here, and you don't always get to. And some players are a lot more like honest and upfront about some of their struggles. I mean, we just talked about a couple of weeks ago the Willie Cauley-Stein situation, which was, Willie came out and just really admitted that he almost, he easily could have overdosed and died, taking what he thought was Percocet for way too long, and handfuls of drugs, that, again, he realizes afterwards are fentanyl laced, and going to rehab and trying to find his way through. And, we've had stories like this in Sacramento. There are players that have come through, that either their stories are super known, which I think Thomas Robinson is a player who his story was like super, super well known, but he didn't really talk about it all that much, with just the loss and the tragedy all around him. We had Ben McLemore here, who again, had all kinds of tough upbringings. And then the guy that always sticks out to me is Darnell Jackson. Like, he was upfront and honest about his struggles, just to survive, just to be a human being, and the fact that he had made it. Like, when he was with the Kings, I could have sworn he was like 30 something, and he was like 23 years old. And you could see how his life experience had aged him so quickly. And it was like brutal. Go look up the Darnell Jackson story. It's absolutely incredible what he's gone through. And some players, like, this is like their story. And then, good on DeMar for being able to put it into words. But I also think it's, a 34, 35-year-old DeMar that's able to put it into words, as opposed to most of the time, a 22, 23-year-old guy trying to explain some of these things. It doesn't always resonate as well, or they're not as comfortable in who they are as people, and able to like express themselves. That makes sense. Yeah. Sean, you were in the locker room with Darnell. I like his story is just nuts. Like, it's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah. No, it's tough. And I was kind of going back in my mind there and thinking of other players and whatever issues or history that they've gone through, tough upbringings, and, even in somewhat recent memory of being in the Golden One Center, like, obviously Ty Lawson was one of those guys, in terms of alcohol. And there's just a lot of, everyone's got a story, and that's what makes what we do so fascinating, because you're talking to people who excel at the highest level in the world, when it comes to their job. And there's obviously varying degrees of that, but everyone comes from different places. And I think it's always funny as fans, you can look back and go, oh, that guy sucks. But like, yeah, that guy was also like the king shit at his high school or his college, or the number one option. And it's just funny how, not funny, but it's unique to see how the evolution from going from something like that to a player who fits a certain role on the team. And then you look at him and you see what they do on the court, and it's hard to picture them being like an alpha or being the guy at a certain other place. That's already revelatory enough. Now peel back those layers and what makes them, as a person, what drives them, what motivates them, what's their history like. And I think we're, it's fortunate to be able to talk to people on that level and get to know them. And every player has a fascinating story.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, that's for Brenden. That's something I think, like, you're going to start phasing into that moment where you're going to start looking for some of these stories, just because there's going to be basketball, and then you're going to be like, okay, I've written about basketball for a long time. I'd like to write about something that's a little different here and there, and it doesn't have to be all the time. And then the other story that, like, the other player that I don't know why we haven't brought up is Skal Labissiere, and who has one of the most incredible stories of any basketball player ever. I mean, just like for him to, he literally got dropped off from school with his brother, and then his dad drives away, and him and his mom and his brother are in the house, and the earthquake happens in Haiti, and their apartment collapses on him, and he gets stuck like with a wall laying on top of him in the seated position, with his knees up near his chest for like 8 hours straight while people are digging him and his family out. And it took him like 2 months to learn how to walk again. And it's just like these are real stories from real people that somehow make it to the league. And Sean talks about it, like they're the best players that their school has ever seen. In most cases, they're like a one of one for their community, and they get to the league. And this is something that Kyle always says. Like he'll jokingly say that he stinks at football, and then he catches himself and goes, "Okay, he doesn't stink at football. He just stinks comparatively to other NFL players. As far as a football player, he's probably in the top 99.9% of the world, and he's amazing." And I think it's something that people lose sight of all the time when it comes. You see a guy miss a free throw, and you want to yell just how much he stinks. At the same time, he doesn't stink. He's really, really good at the game of basketball. He just missed shots. And if he's good enough to make it to the NBA, is good enough to be one of like 450 people in the league that is in the world, which is incredible. So anyway,
Can I, this is, you guys mentioned Ty Lawson and a little bit of a energy change here, but I just got educated on everything that went on when he went over to China. And some of those Instagram posts were, it was entertaining to
share
get
with the
educated.
class.
No,
Share
I
with
don't
the
think I
class.
need
No,
to.
because I think you need to. There's a lot of people that don't know, and you can do it.
Yeah. Okay. So during the lockout, right? I guess we're going to do this. He went over and played in China. And I forget exactly what had happened. I think that they were not paying him properly was his side of the story there. And he ends up not being around the team for a little while and posts on his Instagram, which again, I'm kind of relaying things. I didn't realize this was the case, that Instagram is not exactly a public platform in China. And I guess I'm going to read this. Posted, it says, Chinese woman got cakes on the low, might switch up my stance soon. And apparently this got shifted into it was taken as a racist mark once it eventually hit Chinese social platforms, and he is permanently banned from the Chinese Basketball Association. But hearing him be on a podcast, it was The Raw Room, which is hosted by a bunch of former NFL guys, and they are just clowning on people all the time, was very funny. And I didn't expect to explain myself there fully and read that out loud.
People need to know.
It was a very entertaining conversation. And you said his name, so it made me think about it. And I'm sitting here laughing to myself.
well, we covered him in the locker room, and a couple of things. Number one, he has a brand of I guess what are they?
Sleekers. I don't
They're
know if
called
they're.
sleekers for sure.
Yeah, I don't
I
know if they're
think
still around anymore, but
I don't
definitely
know if
had
they
one at
are.
the time.
They are amazing. So basically, he has slippers that are big, poofy sneaker slippers, and they are spectacular. So he would wear them around in the locker room quite often. And I always thought, number one, he was a very funny dude, like class clown. He did stuff all the time in the locker room, messing with other players. He was really like a light in the room guy. Like specifically, um, he would steal people's underwear. So when they came to get dressed after going to the shower, they wouldn't have their underwear, and then they're looking around like, who stole my underwear? He would do stuff like that all the time. I just remember Costa Kufis being very pissed because he couldn't find his underwear, and he was a funny dude. But then there's a dark side of Ty Lawson, and this is one of those things that like Sean, your stories with Ty Lawson are like,
Oh, we don't have to put those out here today.
we don't have to put they're out there.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, but yes, there's he was an just remember when he missed the flight in the preseason. They were supposed to go back to Kentucky and have that preseason game. They went from LA to Kentucky, and he didn't make it.
Didn't make the flight.
So
yeah. Tough stuff.
Yeah.
And the Kings were very hopeful that he was going to be some sort of answer for them, and it just never worked out. I thought he was a nice guy, and he had played with Kosta Koufis for a long time in Denver, so like clearly they were friends, and he felt like he could mess with him. He did that with other younger players and stuff too, but I always found him to be like a breath of fresh air in the locker room. He was a fun dude, quiet but funny, and just like the demons, man. It's really tough. So we're having like a really dark, weird podcast to start. I don't know how it got here, but
you're blaming DeRozan's book on this. I
Yeah.
think.
I'm not
am
blaming.
I allowed to do one more thing? He's been doing a couple podcasts as well. I don't know if you guys have seen this.
Who has?
Boogie, DeMarcus Cousins. He went
Oh, yeah.
on Draymond's podcast, as my mic decides to hate me, Draymond's podcast and Jeff Teague's podcast. And the one thing I wanted to kind of get your guys' perspective on is at some point, I think it was on Draymond's pod, he got asked, do you have any regrets in your career? And he said the only regret that he had was an interaction he had with a reporter in the locker room after that reporter had written something about his brother and the confrontation that he had with him. And I believe you guys were both there.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was just kind of curious, since he made it public. I don't know if it was before.
Oh, it was public.
Perspective. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, you can find the video on YouTube.
Oh,
The video
I did not
of
realize
YouTube, you can see the side of my face because the camera guy who decided to roll video in the locker room was standing right next to me. Yeah. So Andy, what am I drawing? Like Ferrillo.
Ferrillo.
Yeah, Andy Ferrillo.
No, and look, it's good to hear that perspective. I listened to that. I have not heard him on the Jeff Teague show yet. I probably will, but a lot of the stuff when it comes to DeMarcus is things that we're all pretty familiar with, and I think as much as I'd like to see him still play basketball, and I think there's a lot of people that would like to see him still play basketball. There's a part of me that's very, very excited because I think he's going to be brilliant in the media game. And it's going to be interesting to see what shakes out over these next few years with the television contracts, with the league, and just who ends up investing. And I think he's going to be a voice you hear more and more and more of. And I think that's a good thing because I really appreciate, respect, and am entertained by a lot of the things that he reads from the game today. I don't know that you heard a lot of that in the Draymond podcast. Like, I think there was more of a reflective on his career and what he's done. And certainly that was my last on-camera interview with him a couple years ago. Ironically, it was like my first day on the job at Fox 40. You can find that on YouTube. It's or even on my social media post. I love that interview. Thought it was, a pretty. He was still, the nerves were still pretty raw when it came to Sacramento. But putting that aside, I think that I want to hear him more talk about today's game, his read on players, teams, situations. Really as an analyst in today's game, because he's not that far removed. I think he has a brilliant feel for it, and I think he's very honest. And for a guy who was very much aware of what was being said about him all over the place, he'd seek that out himself as a player. I think he's going to take to being a member of the media very, very well, and being an analyst, analyzing these games and these players very, very well.
I'm intrigued to see that because, we had DeMarcus, like the first 6.5 years of his career were like my first 6.5 years covering the league. So like watching him grow, watching him mature, watching him take missteps, watching him take steps backwards. And then, again, like that, you're always worried, like the off the court stuff was never great. Well, actually, I'll say he had some off the court things that were not great. He also had a lot of off the court things here in Sacramento where he helped people tremendously. Again, like the high school football player from Grant High School that was shot and killed like in a drive-by right before a playoff
JJ Clavo.
game. Yeah, he paid for the funeral and wanted that kept anonymous, and it was not kept anonymous. The way that he handled himself at youth basketball camps, outside of the fact that he literally, like, I drove all the way to his camp and then he wouldn't let me in. One day he got angry with me for something I had written. That happened. But besides that, like all of the other camps that I went to, tremendous with the kids, tremendous in the community. Brought VSP in and partnered with a vision company, care company, to literally have all of the campers from underprivileged areas of Sacramento, that he paid for them to be there to also get eye exams and paid for glasses for a lot of the kids that needed them. Just like there were things about DeMarcus that he did that were tremendous. Even after he left, when he was traded, he had throughout his contract, he had said he would pay for, it was like 150 tickets per game for underprivileged kids to come to games. And when he got traded, they asked him if he wanted to continue paying that or if he just wanted to get off the hook because he was moving to New Orleans. And he said, no, I committed to that. And he kept paying. I don't know if it was a full year after he left as well, but I think it was. So he did a lot of good things that weren't like publicly made, weren't either supposed to be publicized or didn't get put out in public, that were actually good things. So I'm intrigued by him. I'd like to see him. Like to see what he does. Like every time I see him, like he's always super warm and nice to me. And like I'm not Andy Ferrillo. I wasn't the one throwing shade at his family in the middle of the Sacramento Bee for no reason. But we were there for that situation, and that was awkward. Yeah, Brenden, you didn't have to do. You missed an era. You missed.
Yeah, apparently.
Really.
I've heard stories. That's about it.
Yeah, it was different. It was different. But I don't know, Sean, how many good times did you have with him? I mean, you were there doing
Countless. Countless. I mean, it was
right.
Yeah, I mean, every community project he did that I was allowed to show, even some that I kind of popped in on. But yeah, I was with him at very, very. I was at a lot of community stuff with him, and I didn't know we were going to go down this road, but like one of the ones that just I remember the most. And I was working for 10 at the time. We were going door to door delivering holiday meals, and just it wasn't even, it was Christmas time, right? But it was going to some both pretty normal, quote unquote, wealthy, but also you get into some really tough living situations. So it was from all different backgrounds, and it, I say wealthy. There was things that were going on within the household. If you ever heard of like Centers for Fathers and Families, a lot of these nonprofits that work with a lot of families that are going through strife in one way or another, regardless of economic and background. And that was one of them. And I got to go into the homes of some of these people with my camera and watch him interact. And there were some really tough environments. Like a house with about 13 people in it, with the grandmother literally sleeping on the floor. And you could see it weigh on him. You could see it it certainly was eye-opening for me. And one of the things that was I had him mic'd up, and one of the things that I remember that struck me, and I remember seeing it on his face as well, is we're back in this like mini shuttle bus, if you will. And we're heading to the next stop. And one of these gentleman from one of these community efforts in North Highlands, he was talking about how a lot of these kids, because he would see a couple kids starting to become familiar faces, and he says, well, the reality is some of these kids are seeing you more than they see their parents, and like that just struck a chord with both of us, because I mean, I think if you read about DeMarcus's upbringing, it's not the there's obviously he's got his mother around him a lot, but it comes from a different type of household, and I can relate to that myself. And so there was, just seeing that was pretty wild. And, even after he was gone, I mean, I remember, stuff that would happen in the community, he'd come back for, and, it could be something as small as Grant High School throwing a community day and having just a mini carnival, and he'd show up for it, and him being on the sidelines of local high school football games. I mean, just countless things that you could come up with.
Yeah, it's hard to the good and the bad. Like it was always like a very complex situation. I like he is a very complex personality. Like and like had some very good times with him and then had some very dark times and you're like, "Oh boy." Like again, like God's plan night, that was some stuff right there. That was different. And then the situation with Andy Ferrillo, um that got out of hand, and there were 2 people to blame. I mean, at a minimum, there were 2 people to blame. There were probably more than that were to blame that night, but it got out of hand, like, very quickly, but there was never, like, a danger, like, whatever. It was just, bravado, if that makes sense. So, yeah, Brendan, you missed some, like, you walk into a locker room now, there might be 1 dude in there. It's not the way it used to be, and you saw a lot more of what was happening, there it was a little different. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's about all I got. I appreciate the stories and apologies for derailing us.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for joining us right now. We're, of course, this is a KINGSBEAT podcast. We're like 35, 36 minutes in here. We're doing a live stream just to make things easier on the weekend and give something for for all these folks to hang out and chill. So if you're not,
How many thumbs up we got? Am I looking at this right? On
I don't
the
know.
YouTube? 4.
Well, you can see it. 4. That's not. Hey,
4.
we're thumbs
Not
up,
good.
people.
Thumbs
Yeah,
up. We need
that's
those.
not cool.
Doesn't take
Give us a
much.
thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Like a few more people have jumped in. Russ Dog, good to see you in here. Javon, Meg, it's always good to see you, Meg. Alex, lots of good conversation going on in the chat.
Got any
If I missed
questions? I haven't seen
anybody,
any questions.
oh well, see, we haven't been asking for people to give questions for a while. Hey, look, there's the baby daddy. Nice. There's Warren, our friend Warren. D'Lo and Casey always love my the baby daddy, Mr. Angel 916. There we go. The other thing I wanted to bring up today,
Y'all had some conversations, by the way, this week that I heard while in the car about little dogs with named after D'Lo and Casey, and one
the
didn't
kittens,
make it.
the kittens.
Oh yeah, the kittens.
Lil Casey didn't make it,
and one had a moment or had a thing that he couldn't get rid of that he probably should have consulted a doctor about, and that was incredible. I almost swerved off the road.
That was not okay. So first of all, that was not Kenny's kitten or D'Lo's. That was
no, they were named after him, right?
I think it was Katie from 106.5. I think it Katie
Wake
and
Up
Gavin.
Call.
The Wake Up Call. Yeah. So from the Wake Up Call. Yet they had got 2 kittens and named them D'Lo and Casey. And poor little Casey didn't make it. He had an issue as a cat. No, I don't know what it's called. We'll just say it's like this. That warning they give you if when you're watching TV, if you were to take Viagra or one of those other drugs like that, what can possibly happen to you at 4 hours?
He stayed ready.
Yeah, he was ready. And unfortunately, that seems to have been to his demise. I don't know what happened there, but Lil Kenny.
And we're talking about a cat still here, right? We're not talking.
We're talking about a kitten.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about a kitten. Things went. That was last Friday, and things went like sideways very quickly. I had no idea what was happening. And next thing, well, was that Friday? I think it was Friday. Whatever happened that day, it was wild. And you don't usually drive me to drinking, but I was driven to drinking on the air. Like, it got a little out of hand. So I'm glad you were listening, Sean.
Must be nice to drink on your job. I wish I could.
Well, not technically. He probably not supposed to do that, but every once in a while, it gets a little out of hand. Yeah. Yes. I think this is well said right here.
Like I said, it was a wild topic I stumbled onto while turning you guys on the radio, and didn't expect that. It was funny because I had a friend of mine from out of town who came in. He's like, "What are this? Is the radio station I used to work at that Brenden does. He's like, is it still the only sports station in town? I said, oh, there's another one. And it was on. And so I had parted ways with him by that time, but I know it was playing in his car when he got back into it. So I'm sure he stumbled upon that. I didn't have the heart to check in with him.
Yeah, it was a wild day. That was a wild day with D'Lo and Casey. On occasion, that happens. And let's get to some of the other stuff. Number one, the other cool thing, we've talked about this extensively, that Sabonis is on October 9th, so we're just a couple of weeks away from the release of the Netflix series starring one Domantas Sabonis, along with LeBron James and Jimmy Butler and Jason Tatum and Ant-Man. What's
Anthony Edwards,
starting five?
Please.
Starting
Who's
five.
calling him Ant-Man?
Everyone calls him Ant-Man. I don't know what you're talking about. And let's be honest, how many Anthony Edwards are there in the television/sports world? There's many. There are many Anthony Edwards. Just saying, Sean. So, I think that's
call him that.
Okay. That's going to be super fun. But also, De'Aaron Fox has been in China with Steph Curry. Like, what do you guys think this is going to do for him? Not just like, I don't mean it in a way where, I think he's going to get famous, but I think the way that he's being, like, they're being mobbed everywhere they're going and stuff. Do you think that this is going to be an experience that he takes something, like it takes away from it and understands like what kind of like global force he can be, what kind of global brand he can be?
Yeah, I mean, as long as he doesn't go full Ty Lawson in China, I think that everything should be good.
There it is.
To be real, like, people are there for Steph and De'Aaron as well. Don't get me wrong, but Steph is the major pull right now. And I think that as he does this throughout the years, assuming that's going to be the case, that more and more so, people will be more intrigued by De'Aaron and be there for him. And it really helps grow his brand. I mean, I think that you can see a direct correlation of when he signed a Clutch and he's in Kaiser commercials, he goes to Curry Brown, he's out there in China. And so I think that you're seeing his brand expand a little bit. And I think that obviously that's beneficial to him, but it's also beneficial to the Kings. You get some international fans going on as well. So I'd imagine that it's a unique experience because Steph just has a ridiculous pull out there specifically, and obviously in the States as well. But in my mind right now, a lot of it is him kind of tagging along. And as the years go, again, assuming that will continue, there will be more and more support and fans out there really on De'Aaron's side, and good for his brand. Get to release the shoe out there as well. And so I think it's all good things.
Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's getting a taste of what it's like to be Steph Curry at like peak Steph Curry moments coming off of the Olympics, where the whole world's watching you just absolutely step on the throat of France. I mean, that was still so wild. Teams like the Kings have experienced Steph Curry at his most peak levels, and now it was a nation's turn, and just some wild times. And yeah, I think if you were to ask De'Aaron Fox, I don't think he has any admiration of that attention. I think he's totally cool. They're there for Steph. like it's nice that Fox is there, and he's obviously coming up on the rise. I mean, he's already famous. People know who he is. But that takes a back seat when you're, a global superstar like Stephen Curry. And I don't think De'Aaron Fox, desires that in any way, shape, or form. But I do think it's good. It's good that he's getting I think it's good that he's getting a signature shoe. And I kind of alluded to this on my Instagram the other day. It's like we've seen a lot since he came into 2017 with him. I mean, he's going into another season here in Sacramento. It's the only organization he's known. You've seen him take all kinds of steps, from just growing, his body changing a bit, realizing what it's like to be a pro, becoming a father, becoming a max contract player, being an all-star, being an all-NBA person at one point, then tasting the playoffs and, playing with other superstars and having kind of some pressure taken off. He also knows what it's like to absolutely suck and go through a year where you're not any good. So he's experienced a lot. There's still much more for him to experience. So him having a signature shoe, even though yes, he had the one with Nike that he got to design, but this one is his own, and the Curry brand is strives to be what Jordan is, and he's the first athlete. I think that's special. I think that whether no matter how well that brand takes off or does, it remains to be seen. But I think Curry's the right person to be the face of that Under Armour product. So it's going to be. I think it just all comes at a good time for him, and it's just kind of fun to see him kind of come into his own. And now these are those years where it's like, oh, you've entered your prime. What do you do with it?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm super excited for De'Aaron and what this all means for him. And I also I think Steph is the perfect person to have, sort of be your outside of basketball mentor for De'Aaron Fox. And I say that because Steph is an introvert. He is a quiet dude who has built his brand by whatever flair he brings to the court has added to sort of the myth of who he is. And he doesn't do it with a bunch of talking. He does, like the night and stuff like that for sure. But he's not like a guy who's going out there and boastful and doing crazy things to draw attention to himself. What he does to draw attention to himself is do some of the most amazing things we've ever seen on a basketball court. And he leads by example as opposed to leading in a way like that Draymond Green does for that team specifically. So I think it's really cool to have a mentor like this that De'Aaron is getting to tag along with. And also the other cool thing about this partnership is De'Aaron tried out shoes like in the first month of the season one year when he was a sneaker free agent. And I think one of the cool things about this whole entire thing is that he chose the brand of shoes that fit and made his ankles feel better and made his feet feel better and worked with his ankle braces as like one of the deciding factors of what brand he was going to go with. And, I very specifically, I remember DeMarcus Cousins walking into a locker room, opening a brand new pair of shoes that he was going to wear that night. And I don't know if people know, DeMarcus, I believe, wore a new pair of shoes every single game. And he was like, what in the hell is this? And he's bending a shoe like this. I have to wear these tonight. Like, what is happening? Like freaking out.
And he turned his ankle in it quite frequently. And then it became really an issue to where it's like, you want to wear the shoe because you're getting paid to wear the shoe, but they had to change it up. And he wasn't going to wear any braces on his ankles.
And then the reverse was Costa Koufos, who had bought like a whole bunch of one shoe at the Nike outlet store that he loved. And then he would wear that shoe until it fell apart. And then he had another version of the same shoe that he would put on like 4 months later. And it was always the same exact shoe. Anyway,
DeMar said he wears a new shoe every game too.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Could you imagine not breaking in a shoe? Not like as an elite athlete. I actually felt like there were times where DeMarcus Cousins' foot problems that he started to develop and ankle problems were because of his shoes and because of the way he dealt with shoes, and because they would send him shoes that were literally built for like kicking around at like the Santa Cruz Beach boardwalk, not a shoe for a 290 pound, 6'11".
Do we lose him?
Yeah, I think we did.
I know my internet's been
trying to be
lately.
patient to see how long it's going to take before he just super speeds back.
If he disappears, that's going to be hilarious, because I think that happened a couple times ago. But he might have to reset or something. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. We need to get some questions though. I hate doing live shows and ignoring all the people in this chat.
I saw one in here from TJ.
Hey, I made it back.
Oh, there we go. I was checking out a question from chat. TJ asked us earlier, Keegan and Fox both aligning for big extensions next summer. Will their goals be at odds with each other, or is there room for both to do enough to get max extensions?
Go ahead, James.
I think this is a great question. Because like DeMar DeRozan is a guy who's going to want the ball, and Malik Monk is a guy who's going to want the ball, and Domantas Sabonis just has the ball because that's the offense. And then you got these guys that one of them who, again, Fox, in order for Fox to get the big payday, he can earn up to 35% of the team's salary cap, right? So if you can imagine it when the salary goes up and his contract, he's under contract this year, he's under contract next year. So I think what is it? The salary cap is at 142 this year. It's expected to go up to 156 next year. And then the year after is when the television deal kicks in, and it can only go up 10% a year, but we're looking at so that's like 170. So somebody with a calculator out there do 170 times 35%, which is the starting salary that he could make if he makes all NBA. So,
Just under 60 mil, 59.5.
Yeah, and that's your first year salary. Now times that by 1.08 and add it to the 60, and then do that 5 times because it's a 5-year deal that he would get. There is a lot of money, but De'Aaron Fox already makes a lot of money. There's just cartoon money that's waiting if he makes all NBA. So he definitely has a reason to go crazy. Now, the Keegan is in a weird situation as well because as of right now, I don't know he's a max rookie scale extension guy. I mean, he's played really, really well, right? But what does that mean? I'm not sure if he's I would say this. At a minimum, Keegan Murray to me in modern NBA is a $20 million player right now moving forward. But can he become a $25 million player? Can he take the next step, which is the $30 to $32 million max extension guy? And I'm not sure. I think it's going to be intriguing to watch what he becomes. And people in the chat say he's not a max extension guy. I see is secure in Bagley, and that's okay. You can say that he's not a max extension guy, but he might be a max extension guy because you might have to pay him that. And so I think it's going to be interesting because your salary cap can just blow up and go crazy, but it won't for a couple of years. I think that's the point. Keegan has 2 more years before his rookie scale extension kicks in, and Fox has 2 more years before his extension kicks in. And then by that point, you're, again, 2 years into DeMar, you're 2 years into Monk's 4-year deal, and you're also 2 years into Sabonis's. That will be after 2 years of his 4-year extension. So yeah, a little bit complicated, right?
Yeah, I think on
De'Aaron's
end. Go ahead, Sean.
Go ahead. No, I was gonna say it is complicated, and I think they're fortunate they don't have to answer that question yet. But I think Keegan does become extension eligible next year, though. Next summer.
Yeah.
Correct?
Oh no, he's extension eligible, but it doesn't kick in until the year after.
You're right. Yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting to see how they make it all fit. You're going to be paying on potential for sure. And look, DeRozan, it's a 2, maybe 3-year deal. I think it kind of lines up well for Keegan to get paid if all goes well. And maybe, it's also possible you have a different idea of what Keegan Murray is. And, maybe he gets a lot higher, maybe he gets a little bit lower. Maybe he's, thought of as somebody who's expendable by that time. I'm not, I just throwing it out there in terms of possibility's sake. But, yeah, I think you'll have
dark. Sean went dark.
No, I think you're gonna have. Look, you can't pay everybody, right? So you're gonna have a much more clearer picture of what it is you have to do versus risks. I mean, you can't you have to say no to somebody at some point.
Well, and I mean, I would point out before you jump in here, Brenden, it's also 2 years from now. Kevin Huerter's contract is up. You enter the bonus year of DeMar DeRozan. So there is money coming off the books as these guys get paid, but you also need a team. You need good players. Go ahead, Brenden.
I like Meg's joke of salary dump them to Toronto. But like Sean said, you're definitely paying for potential in this case when it comes to, just the nature of rookie scale extensions, even Keegan being a little bit older, 24 right now. He's one of the biggest variables, like I kind of mentioned earlier, on what this team can eventually be, is how good will Keegan Murray end up being. And in my mind, it wouldn't surprise me if it's restricted free agency that it ends up being, and betting on himself potentially in that 4th year rather than an extension coming off of next season, just to see like what does the continued development look like going into his 4th season in the NBA. And obviously the Kings still have team control, again, restricted free agency if it got to that point. But there are questions about like, what is this guy's ceiling? And maybe internally what they've expressed, at least to the public, is that they believe that this guy can really be something special in this league. But I think that there's still more to show on what that may exactly look like in terms of self-creation and things like that. And how much is he going to get the opportunity to do so with DeMar DeRozan and the aspect of De'Aaron Fox as well. I think that I'm kind of thinking that this is a contract year essentially for De'Aaron, not in the aspect obviously of being a free agent after the conclusion of it, but you're really playing for more than even what you typically are. And so I don't think that means De'Aaron's going to be over aggressive or anything like that, but I'd imagine that means puts an extra edge on your off-season workouts and being tuned in every single night. I think that's one of the big things with De'Aaron. You know, there's shot selection for sure. I think, and I think that's part of the development of his 3-point shot, you know, figuring out the ideal moments to take that. I think that's part of the process that we're going to see throughout the course of this season. But I think the biggest thing for him is obviously you got to play the minimum of 65 games, but you need to ball out for a lot of them. You can't have 20 where you're a little bit more quiet. So I think that consistency is a big thing. And the fact that he's going into a contract year makes me think we're going to see a pretty good season from De'Aaron.
Yeah, I think so too. I think having guys in contract years is a good thing. I don't know how it's all going to work out. I think they're going to be motivated to win. I think Fox is the one player that truly understands what winning means to your career, and how if you win, they accept you into the cool kids club, and if you don't win, they disrespect the hell out of you. And like, he's lived it the last like 7 years. But I still think like it's one of those situations where you're going to have, there's only one ball, and you got a bunch of guys who are hungry and a bunch of guys who are scorers. And, you know, that's where Keegan Murray needs to fight first place at the table. Let's just do this. I've been starring a couple of questions. If you guys have questions, send them in right now. And we're going to take those. Your questions are going to be today's version of the business of basketball.
Boop, 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 boop.
Yes, a new noise.
You have to switch it up.
So
he's been waiting for that. That was it.
We missed it last episode.
It's Blue Steel. It's his version of Blue Steel.
Sure.
But is it going to be a different one each week?
No, we'll
Each
just have
time
like
you
a
do
couple
it?
that we rotate through. You know, we only have 2 right now, and then eventually we'll add another one in. The
How do you
the
land on the
mariachi
one where
band
you're...
sound landed for a while. There's no
Wait,
like,
that's what that was?
I don't really know. I just randomly put a name on it. I have no clue. You know, there's
How do you
no,
land
there's
on
no.
them? How do you know?
You
there's
just
no
you just have to
strategy?
feel it. You just have to feel it, Sean. You know.
Okay,
It's a
I haven't
feel.
felt it, but
Yeah.
It's a feel
You
you
will.
have to have.
You will.
I love that this is part of our show. It just, again, it cracks me up. As we're fielding your questions, we've got questions coming in. I need to, Spencer, I do need to make a business basketball shirt. The one other thing I want to bring up is Peja Stojakovic was inducted into the FIBA Basketball Hall of Fame this weekend. So shout out to our guy Peja. He's like, I didn't get to cover him as a player. I came in my first year covering the league was 2010-11 when he was with the Mavericks and they won a title. But I have spent quite a bit of time with Peja over the last over the stretch when he was here as the assistant general manager, and just a really, really cool dude. And I'm excited to see his son hopefully make it into the league as well. And so big shout out to our guy Peja. I personally believe he will make the Hall of Fame. It'll be under the European sort of induction, but I believe he is a surefire Hall of Famer, which, you know, would give the Kings a third Hall of Famer from their glory years from 1998 to 2006. So let's get to this. We've got some questions. We already took one question. This, of course, is part of the business of basketball.
Not doing it
Go ahead,
again.
Brent. If
No.
you're not doing it again.
No, you get it one time an episode.
Skieran Bagley. Will Jordan McLaughlin get all of Davion's minutes, or should we expect more from Monk and Herter? Brandon, what do you got?
I would throw Keon in there too. I think that, coming into the year that Keon was slotted into like really the fourth point guard on the roster. Mike Brown kind of revealed at a point, Fox, Davion, and then even Colby Jones above him, and then Keon Ellis. And again, 1 to 4 is interchangeable a lot throughout the course of Sacramento's offense. And it's just who's going to be able to defend the ball. So I think that McLaughlin's good. I don't know that I'm expecting him to. I don't think that. I think that there could be nights where other guys have their moments, and that lessens how much you're seeing McLaughlin. And again, I think that Keon is that guy. If Colby were to continue to develop, I could see him getting minutes here and there. I'm not super encouraged, obviously, by what went on in Summer League, and think there's probably still more room there. But I think it kind of gets spread out. They mentioned Malik Monk in there as well. I think that he functions as a point guard just as much as anybody else on this team, really. So those are really the ones I would look at. I think that, I would expect Malik to play more. Obviously, I think Keon will play more. And then you have McLaughlin as an option there as well to play 12 minutes a night and sometimes less.
What do you got, Sean, on this?
No, I mean, if that's one of the questions you'll have at training camp. I also think that the way that question might have been phrased was looking at it in terms of Keon being a starter maybe and looking at bench minutes with maybe Malik and Herter. I'm not saying that's the way I would do, but certainly it was kind of the way I thought maybe the intention with the question was being there. But yeah, I agree. I think it comes more so to Keon first. I think McLaughlin will be very much a guy who is he might not be an everyday player. It'll be somebody you see maybe every second, third game, situational. It depends on how deep, Mike Brown wants to go into his rotation. I suspect, much like most coaches, he'll open it up pretty early on in the season. I don't know that it's going to be, an 8 to 10 man rotation all the time like you see later in the year. So, but it'll be interesting to see how camp shakes out, because I think there are some little battles that could be brewing, and Mike Brown might have an idea of what he's going to go with, but I think he'll be approaching this competitive training camp with a very open mind as it pertains to at least the rotation, starters, bench players, all that stuff.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of this. I do think, look, I think there's a possibility that he fills in and takes Davion's minutes, which I think realistically were 13 to 15 minutes a night. And if you look at what McLaughlin did last year for Minnesota, he shot like 45% from 3. And if you had Davion Mitchell shooting 45% from 3, he would still be on the roster. Just like, I don't think there's any question about that. And so I think there's a possibility, and I'll very quickly, I could see a starting lineup of De'Aaron Fox and Keon Ellis. And I think coming off the bench, you can have Malik Monk, and then we're all like sort of attuned to the fact that Kevin Huerter has been the starting shooting guard on this team. I think Kevin can be your first small forward off the bench. And in that scenario, I could see a place where Jordan McLaughlin could actually get minutes. But a couple of things. Number one, that's only going to last until Devin Carter is fully up to speed and ready, unless he's not this year. So maybe that's next season we're talking about. The other thing is, you talked about early season. I don't have the Kings schedule in front of me, but if I'm not mistaken, don't they play Minnesota 3 times in the first 15 games of the season? It seems like they play Minnesota a bunch. And so I wouldn't doubt that we see him play against his former team a little bit, especially early in the season as they're trying to get this thing off the ground. So that's a good question, though. Let's see. Rustdog, Brennan, James, and Sean, who on the Kings will have a breakout season? Monk, DeRozan, or Murray? I think this is an interesting grouping of 3, but what do you think, Sean?
Of the three, I think it's tough only because I expect Malik Monk to do what he does. Keegan Murray, there's a bit of a question mark there as to how he maximizes opportunities with obviously having a guy like DeMar DeRozan who historically gets a lot of those opportunities, scoring opportunities. I think it's probably going to be DeRozan because I think he's going to mean so much to this offense. And, you haven't seen it before in Sacramento. You haven't seen it with this group. So I think just by him being himself, it's still going to catch the eye more than maybe what the other two do. I kind of hope I'm wrong, though, to be honest, because I think for them to truly be this this force in the West with how competitive it is, it has to be both DeRozan and Murray. And you could probably put more so on the shoulders of Keegan to really take that gigantic step, in my opinion. And I don't know what that looks like yet, but if that happens and you don't see a regression from the people that you have and he becomes, that guy, which is kind of what you want to see. Like you get a pass, in my opinion, not a pass. I mean, you obviously had a fantastic rookie season. I thought he was good last year, but when you step into that third, fourth season, that's where you notice that big foot forward. So yeah, to me, I think if you're a Kings fan, you got to be hopeful that Keegan is the guy that really takes that step forward. But I think at the end of the year, we'll be talking more about DeRozan because you haven't seen him with these guys. You haven't seen, everyone's had this wonder, how does it fit? And if all goes to plan and it fits well, I think that's just going to be the more of the shock to the system, and it'll be more noticeable.
Brenden?
Yeah, I think it's well said. I mean, I think that Keegan is the easy answer here. The youngest guy on the list, the one that, like we mentioned earlier, gets talked about is what can the next step be for him. And I think that defensively, we saw a lot of growth last year, but it seemed like that maybe messed with his legs a little bit on the offensive end. Still obviously treated as he should as an elite 3-point shooter, but the 41% goes down to 35, 36. So maintaining that, and also a lot of it in my mind is mindset. When Harrison Barnes wasn't getting as many points up earlier in the year, it was the same thing that was said about when Keegan Murray would have those moments. They have to recognize it and go take it essentially in the offense. And is that going to be even more difficult for him when now there's also DeMar DeRozan on this roster? So that's an interesting aspect to me there for sure. I think a lot of it is probably mindset, which obviously comes with confidence as well and in his ability. I will say on Malik Monk, I'm a little interested to kind of monitor how he performs this year, because it felt like a lot of last season, one of the big things he was being praised for was being just working extremely well outside of the games, being in the gym early, staying late. And, that's something that happens a lot in contract years. And sometimes there's a fall off or a different way things are approached when you do have that deal signed. So I'm not saying I expect that to be the case, but I think it's something that I'm interested to monitor.
Let's get to one more here that I saw. Will DeMar, this is from Easy Where You Going. Will DeMar get to the free throw line less now that he's on the Kings, seeing that the Kings never get the whistle? I think this is it's a interesting question, but I would tell you this, in the not last season, but the season before, the Kings were 7th in the league in free throw attempts, and they were 3rd in free throw makes, and they got to the line all the time. When they were the number 1 rated offense in NBA history, a lot of it came at the line. And DeMar DeRozan is a dude who gets to the line no matter what. He has the respect of the officials, and I hope that it rubs off on the rest of the Kings. And I also hope that DeMar DeRozan has a couple of conversations with officials when Domantas Sabonis is hitting the head for the 3rd time in a game.
That's a good point. Good point.
Because I think he will. He has the ear of the officials, and I think he can say, "Hey, look, man, this isn't okay. What's happening, and you're gonna have a big problem. And show some respect. This is a great player who is an All NBA player, and he just got hit in the head for the 2nd or the 3rd time tonight in an egregious manner, and you need to call the whistle." But I think he has the cachet to do that. I also think that DeMar DeRozan in the 4th quarter, is going to get the ball a lot the final 2 minutes because he's a tremendous free throw shooter. And the Kings are not tremendous free throw shooters as a group. And I think that when it comes to crunch time, number one, he's one of the best scorers in crunch time, but he's also one of the best at getting to the free throw line in crunch time. And that's a big deal. So
I got a question for you guys. What do you? Okay, so Keegan Murray he averages 11.2 over the 2 years he's been in Sacramento in terms of field goal attempts. Last year it was 12.7 per contest. Do you think he gets beyond? Do you think that's higher this year?
That he gets to how many higher than 12?
Higher than 12.7. So just round up, higher than 13.
Field goal attempts?
Yeah.
No.
I don't think so either, but I'll say I think there will be more instances where he has games where he shoots a lot, if that makes sense. Like when they're feeding him because he's rolling. Or less feeding him and more so him going out there and taking it. But, you're replacing essentially Harrison Barnes' 8.9 field goal attempts, and now you're bringing in DeMar DeRozan, who last year, obviously way above that, was at 17.2. So I think naturally, like everybody's shot attempts are probably going to dip.
I think he can get the same amount of field goal attempts, but I think he's going to hit like 0.8 of a three more per game, which equates to like 2.4 points. I mean, that's yeah. I think he'll hit a lot more than he did last year. And that for me, I don't know. There's going to be games where he's wide open in the corner. He might be able to get more field goal attempts, but it has to come at someone's expense. And I don't know that there's anyone who's willing to give up that at this point. But I do think that just the natural progression of him as a player, I think his field goal percentage will go up overall. I think his 3-point field goal percentage will go up tremendously back up to the like 40-41% this year. And that will just mean more makes. So he could realistically look like the same exact player who just averages 17 and a half or 18 points a game, as opposed to a player who's averaging 16 because he missed a bunch of free throws. I mean, because he missed a bunch of open threes.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if it comes a little bit at the expense of Fox. We've talked about it before. Like, is the best recipe for success for him to be this big time scorer that he's shown to be over the past year? And remember that streak of 30 games that he was having? Do you need him to be north of 26 points per game, or do you need him to maybe be, with the addition of DeRozan, can he be just as impactful with right around 22, 23 points per game?
Yeah, it's a good question, Sean. I don't think we're going to know how all the ingredients mix until we get to see them. I know that's what Meg said earlier. She wants to wait and see. And like, I know a lot of people are asking about the ceiling, what we think is the ceiling. We're not to that point yet. Let's wait until we get to like preseason. We get to super close to the season when we would make some sort of claim on what we think the win total might be for the season. But like, I think that there's going to be a little bit of a growth, like trying to figure each other out situation here. But I also, I've said this a couple of times, I think adding that third playmaker in the starting lineup in DeRozan, who can get 5 or 6 assists in a game, the two guys that are going to reap the benefits of that, in my opinion, are Domantas Sabonis on the roll to the basket. And I don't think his field goals are going to go down at all, because I think he's going to get easier looks. And then the other guy is Keegan, because I think if you've got to have all eyes on Fox, and then you have to have all eyes on Domantas, and you have to have all eyes on DeMar DeRozan, that just leaves Keon Ellis, if he's starting, or whoever is starting at the shooting guard spot, but also Keegan Murray, just wide open. Like, there's going to be so many nights where you're like, man, that guy got 8 to 10 3-point attempts, and it wasn't even like he didn't take one that was like questionable. All of them were just in rhythm and wide open. And that's because of the force that are, all the other guys around him. And not to disparage, Monk is going to be part of that as well, like getting him the ball for open looks. I think it'll be interesting. Does that make sense?
There might be less field goal attempts in general if the pace slows down a little bit too.
Yeah, I don't know that that's going to happen. I think they're going to drag DeMar up and down the court.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do final thoughts because we got to get out of here. We're an hour and 15 minutes in, and it's Saturday night, and these two guys have to go out and party. Something wild. Yeah, you guys give me that look like, what? Wait, us? What?
I still got to work.
What?
I'm Holy Bowl bound. I got
Oh,
Jesuit and Christian Brothers tonight.
Oh boy.
Biggest
boy.
high school game in our area all the time, and there's a lot of alumni. They pack Hughes Stadium, so I'll be there for at least the first half.
Okay. So what do you got? Let's start with Brenden. What do you got for final thoughts?
Let's see. In about a week, I'm going to be going to another concert, which is fun. I hadn't been to a concert in a sec, actually, so I'm happy I'm kind of getting these in a little bit here. I'm going out to Oakland. It's Quinn 92, Quinn XCII. I've mentioned him before. Be the second time seeing him. Definitely a fan. I'm going out to Fox Theater. Have you guys ever been out there?
I have, yes.
Thoughts?
Fox Theater. It's great. It's bigger than Ace of Spades. It's more of a theater setting, hence the name. I mean, if you've ever been to see any stand-up comic, who I actually saw Tom Segura at Thunder Valley last week, but yeah, it was great. Should we talk about that?
No, it wasn't that where
it came up on our.
I was gonna go, but
that's where Brenden was gonna go, and Sean was fishing for a ticket, and all of a sudden Sean went, and Brenden didn't.
Yeah, what do you know? Crazy how that happened.
So the way it worked was he thought he could get tickets, and I was gonna go as his +1, I guess, and somebody had already snagged him, and literally right as we're done, hits me up and says, and I was like, oh yeah, I was just talking about Brenden. I think he's going to come too. And he goes, I don't think he's coming.
So you swiped his ticket.
You did, essentially.
Not me. It wasn't
dirty.
me, but he had to beat the other person who was kind enough to invite me and had no idea we were even doing the podcast. So yeah, I got to do that.
It was good time.
But yeah, I think Fox Theater's got, acoustically is great. You're seeing a hip hop show. So most hip hop shows are pretty just loud. Just like a, very bassy. So you're gonna be fine. It's not like you're seeing a great vocal performance or anything like that. But typically, if you saw somebody that has a dynamic range to their voice, it's one of the best places to see. Those type of venues are the best places to see musical artists. So
gotcha. Yeah, a little more
not
pop
echoey.
hip hop.
No more trips to Arizona for you.
No. The family is now starting to rent out that place, and everything's calming down. And on my dad's side lives in Southern California, and during the season, it's obviously a little hard to go out there. So I had my about 2 month stretch of visiting them a bunch and going out to Parker with them and stuff. So that'll slow down for a while, and now I'll just be going to mom's on Sundays for football.
I didn't get Brenden at Future and Metro with me.
I wasn't happy about it. I didn't realize it happened till the day after, and I was disappointed in myself.
Yeah, absolutely brutal. Sean, what do you got for final thoughts?
I'm jealous that he's got concerts coming up because I don't really have anything on my docket at the moment. Hopefully that changes, but we'll see. There's nothing really there. I'm busy, man. Once we get Kings going, it's going to be crazy. So I'm just getting ready for just kind of bracing for that,
We get
oh yeah, Kendrick.
Should it have been Lil Wayne?
No, look, if he shows up, great. But this notion that you have to have an artist. Go look at the history of Super Bowl artists. Okay, there are a few, but most Super Bowl artists don't represent the city that's being played in, right? So yeah, if he shows up, great. That would be great. Would I be in favor of seeing Lil Wayne as a Super Bowl halftime performer, as a headliner? Absolutely. Absolutely I would. But that's also, Kendrick Lamar is kind of next to Taylor Swift, kind of the artist of the year. Maybe Chappell Roan could be thrown into that mix this year too. But those are the 3 artists that come to my mind's eye when I think of the most popular artists of this year. So yeah, I'm great with it. And typically go ahead.
Did you see the Weeknd's concert in Brazil that he live streamed? I honestly, it was eye-opening to me of how huge the Weeknd really is, and it made me research a little bit more. Obviously, I'm familiar, but first artist to reach 100 million monthly streams on Spotify and stuff, and I didn't realize the extent
of
Yeah, I mean,
where he's
I don't,
at.
I don't say this next part to take away from that, but keep in mind Spotify hasn't really been that long, right?
Right. Fair enough.
So from a relevant standpoint, it's fantastic. But yeah, I was actually a fan of his weird Super Bowl show. It's definitely weird, but I feel like if you go back and give it another look, it's very theatrical. It's very interesting. But I'm a big fan of the Weeknd. That same venue, wasn't it? Was Travis Scott just packed it out like afterwards, right? He did the same thing. So anyway, but if you can get like somebody who's from the, like, I remember when Maroon 5 did Atlanta, right, for the Super Bowl, and like Big Boy came out. They wanted to see I was one of them, wanted to see Outkast get reunited there. It didn't happen, but Big Boy was there with it's like Sleepy Brown, and then Travis Scott was actually on that bill too. People forget. So it's always one of the favorite things to talk about is Super Bowl performances, because it's so polarizing. And I give people, anyone who does it, I give them a ton of credit, because you're really putting yourself to be the most scrutinized entertainment moment of the year. Whether it works or it doesn't, that's it's literally going to be scrutinized. So
That's true.
Congratulations.
Well, let's see. Final thoughts from James. It's kind of quiet. I'm super engaged in football. Super excited to watch the Niners play tomorrow, even though Christian McCaffrey's not going to play. So there's that. I did get Jordan Mason in my fantasy football team. So all those people out there it's just tough. Like,
Still chilling with my homies, because you do a dynasty, right?
Rolling with my homies.
Rolling.
Yeah, because we have, which you don't understand the reference. It's from Clueless, which you probably have not seen.
No
chance. And by the way, King's training camp starts October 1st, and media day is the 30th.
Oh, did you get that? You just heard that? I mean, that's what it looks like on the calendar.
That's what it'll be. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got training camp coming up. We've got all that stuff coming up. And we're going to do the best we can to crank back up to 2 podcasts a week during the season. It's just really, really difficult with the 3 of us. Just all 3 of us have all kinds of things going on. And most of the time I don't have a voice left after radio duties, and everyone else has their things going on as well. Sean, last thing, I need to go see a movie tonight. What is out there? I don't want to see Beetlejuice because my sons will be pissed, but if I'm going to see a movie tonight.
You're probably asking the wrong guy. I wish I could help.
What?
I haven't been over I've looked at some of the things. If I was going to a movie tonight, I'd go see Beetlejuice. That's what I would see.
Okay. Well, we might do that and then just not tell them, and then go see it again. Go see it again with them. I don't know. That's fine.
Not gonna ask my opinion. It's okay. You know.
Was there something you saw?
Superhero
No,
one?
I don't have one actually. I just am a little offended. Wanted to point it out.
You told us you watched 2 movies last week. What were those 2 movies?
I watched most of Quiet Place. No, I watched I watched most of Quiet Place, but I watched Twisters, which people were having a good time clowning me, just like you guys
haven't
did.
Seen did you go watch the first yet?
No, probably won't happen. And then the San Andreas, which people in our chat were also saying he watches no movies and he watches that one.
You wasted your.
I agree.
That is such a bullshit movie. That is.
I
awful.
agree.
You wasted one of your movies on that.
You realize
okay.
the movies we tell you about are pretty damn good. You watched Zodiac. I don't know how you got through Zodiac because you fall asleep at every movie you sit down to watch.
I like true crime. Like I was watching earlier last night and today, the new Netflix true crime documentary. So I'll turn on some of that stuff. And I saw Life on there and like hovered it, but I didn't click it. You know, if that means anything to you.
The look on Sean's face. For those of you who are not watching on the stream, the look on Sean's face, just like, you bastard.
We'll get there.
All right. That's going to do it for this edition of the KINGSBEAT podcast. Make sure you're still here. Give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. Give us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast. Subscribe to the channel. Jump on board with the KINGSBEAT. We're about to crank up. It's going to get crazy up in here. We'll have all kinds of coverage, and we'll be back again for another season. This will be my 15th season covering the Sacramento Kings. Sean is like, I want to say going on year
I lost count.
21 or
2000
22. Like,
The
and
01-02
Brenden,
season is when I started, but the 02-03 season was my first full year because I was sporadic in the 01-02 season. So
that's right. Well, for Fox 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast, I am James Ham, Kings Inside for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We'll see you next week.